Hello everybody, I'm rhinociart, and today I'm going to be painting a thing. So obviously because it's October, the last week of October, Halloween-ish time, I figured it would be a good time to do something Halloween-y sort of themed. The problem is, I'm not the biggest fan of Halloween. And nothing against it, it's just personally, it's never been my favorite holiday. Which is a little bit ironic because I really like cosplay and I've done a lot of cosplay in the past, but it feels like in the same way where people put off cosplay until the very last second and then right before a con they're like slamming to get it all done in time. I feel like Halloween sneaks up on me. So I'll keep thinking that I have the entire month to put something together and keep putting it off and putting it off, and then all of a sudden it's that day and I have nothing and I'm feeling awkward about it. I'm also just not the biggest fan of spooky things. I'm a giant marshmallow, so anything that's scary or gory or has a lot of people screaming is just not my dig. When I was a kid, I was definitely into the idea of putting on a costume and running around in the dark and getting giant pillowcases full of candy. It actually used to get really cold around here in like the end of October. Doesn't anymore. Thanks, global warming. But we used to have to run around in a costume with like a snowsuit underneath and like big old mittens. It was a look. The big thing for me when I was making costumes as a kid is that we were literally making costumes. We never really bought costumes. Sometimes we get like a hand-me-down from somebody, some like old 80s thing that nobody was wearing anymore. But for the most part, my sister and I made our own costumes right from scratch. I remember being envious of other kids when I was really little sometimes, having better costumes than I did because they were like store-bought, really fancy whatevers. But now I look back on it and I'm like, mine was OG.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Anyway, so the one thing about Halloween that's really nostalgic for me is the idea of making a costume and wearing something that you've put together personally. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably where a lot of my interest in cosplay came from in the first place. So today I was hoping to share that kind of nostalgic feeling in a watercolor painting of costumes that my sister and I wore when we were kids. I'm still not the best at watercolors, so adventure! So first things first, we're gonna need the sketch that I already drew, some watercolors, and some pumpkins for the aesthetic. I actually don't have a proper set of watercolors yet. I've been using these watercolor crayons. I can't say they're my favorite thing, but I'm still learning watercolors, so it's a good entry point. I began by coloring the skin, and for the shadow and the blush, I use oranges or reds and just sort of mix them into the skin tone that I already had mixed. I really like the fact that you can just add water to dried out watercolors and then boom, you've got that shade back. I picked up some orange next to color the pumpkins that I put at the bottom of the drawing. The image that this came from just had my sister and I standing in front of a wall, so I figured I'd try to add some more Halloween-y decoration to it. It kind of just made it a weird scene. As you can see, I also added the word Hween at the top in case it wasn't self-explanatory what was going on in this image. It was when I got to the hair and started really layering colors that I noticed these watercolors are very strange. I'm gonna attribute it to the fact that they're cheap and that they're watercolor crayons that I'm using like watercolor paints. But there's some sort of thickness to the pigment where the more you build it up, the chalkier it gets. The effect seems to be slightly nullified on actual watercolor paper as opposed to when I've been using this in my sketchbook, but yeah, it's still kind of noticeable. Because both of the costumes had a lot of black in them, I tried to kind of mix it up a little bit. So one of the black tones has more purple mixed into it and one has a little more kind of a blue. I did try my best to layer up the pigments and give the characters shadow. They're not characters, it's my sister and I, but I tried to make this look a little more 3D with several layers. Sometimes I'd add a different color to the current color to try to change the tone a little bit and make it look less flat. My drawings in general tend to look more 2D than I'd like, so it's something I'm working on. Because I figured I should try doing at least one cool watercolory thing, I used a wet on wet technique for the wings to kind of spread the color out. I really liked it and I probably should have done more of this throughout the drawing, but instead I ended up with a lot of spots where I had too much water and then everything just got blobby. Yeah, I'm learning. After I'd put the red pigment to the Hween at the top of the frame, I realized that the red was kind of out of place, so then I started using it as a sort of a shade to the rest of the image to try to make it more cohesive. And then on the other end of things, I added some yellow as, I guess it would be a highlight, but I kind of put a lot of it on the same side as the shade. I guess it's just an accent color. But I did highlight the antennae that I had on in the photo because they did actually light up. I remember that much. Initially when I did the line art, I planned to just use ballpoint pen, but then when I was drawing on the image, I think because of that chalky texture, it wasn't really going on smoothly. There was a lot of gaps in it, so I ended up actually switching to a Sharpie, a very fine tip Sharpie, and that worked way better. You can kind of see in this part what the ballpoint pen was doing. It's not a terrible effect, but it's really not what I was going for here. As per usual, I used a white gel pen for the highlights, and you can see me using a cloth here because I had red paint on my hand that I didn't notice until later and definitely smudged some on the drawing, so I was trying to prevent that in the future. I used some red Posca paint to put the dots on the wings. And then also some silver gel pen to do the same sort of thing. I use the silver in some other spots too for highlight. It's shiny, I can't help myself. And then once I'd taken the tape off the image, I had to fix up the edges a little bit with some white Posca pen just because there was some bleeding. It's probably because I was using recycled washi tape and sometimes some parts of it aren't just sticky anymore. And here's the comparison. Did I get close? I think the poses are a little stiffer than I would have liked, but this was mostly practice for color theory anyway, so I'm pretty happy with it. Thanks so much for watching this, guys. If you liked it, please let me know with a like or a comment or something to that effect. I would very much appreciate it. And if you'd like to hang out and see more of this kind of stuff in the future, feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye!